and Basset Weaving, right? No? So let me ask you before we get started, how many people here actually work in government as a government contractor, government employee? Can you show of hands? Well, how many people don't but want to? Yeah. Why are you here? All right. My name is Gerard. Dache. I'm the Executive Director of the Government Blockchain Association. Have any of you ever heard of the Government Blockchain Association before today? Okay, good. 4 people in the world, that's good. So, do you have the my first slide?
I'm sorry, it's down there.
Oh, all right. Well, so let me tell you just a little bit about me and the Government Blockchain Association while we're waiting for the slides to download. So, has anybody ever heard of ISO 9000 or CMMI? Okay. So I spent about 20 plus years working in the process and quality assurance industry. And I helped the first company in the United States become an ISO 9000 registrar. I got involved in CMI, and in my career, I spent some time in the military, in Army, intelligence, and infantry. And then I started traveling all over the world visiting different companies, essentially doing process audits, right? And in that, I started identifying corruption, especially when I went to China. I was invited to go to China about 20 times by the Chinese government to evaluate Chinese defense contractors to see if the Chinese government could trust them. And I said, you know, I'm a former United States Army intelligence asset, right? And they said, yes, but we understand that we can trust you when we send our own people in to get bribed. So trust, integrity, all that kind of stuff, that's been really big on my agenda for a long time. And you know, sometime over coffee or beer sometime, I'll tell you some really amazing stories. But in that capacity, as I started identifying all this corruption, I started reporting it. And here's a funny thing I've learned. When there's systemic corruption, people don't want to know, right? And the deeper it is, the more complex it is. So as a result, I'm not in that business anymore. And in 2016, in August, we had a meetup. It was a blockchain meetup. We had 2 people show up. And today we have 15,000 people in about 100 cities around the world. We've got about 50 working groups. We do all kinds of stuff. I'll tell you a little bit more about GBA at the end. But what we're going to talk about here is, this is essentially a series that we are doing globally. The Future of Money Governance the Law. We did an event at Georgetown. We did one at George Mason. We had about 200 people there. Steve was there. Steve Olson from the Library of Congress. We had folks from the House, the Senate, IBM, the Lloyd. So we had major industry and government people together. Our organization has a goal of having every government employee in the world that cares about blockchain to be part of our association. And they bring the problems and the use cases to us. And then our members essentially come up with solutions. And so our goal is to bring the private sector and the public sector together to find blockchain solutions for the problems that really plague government. So this is a series that we're doing globally. Let's go to the next slide. Do you want me to do it, or?
Sorry, it's showing.
It's showing on your screen. If you guys would all come and just take a look at her website.
There we go.
So it is just a little delay?
Yeah.
All right. So listen, this is what we're going to talk about. I want to sort of set the table first, right? You know, don't worry, you don't have to go back. So let's talk a little bit about why we're here, right? Why are we here in Colorado? Where are we kind of in the time frame of it, right? So something big is happening, and how did we get here? And I know a lot of you know about Satoshi and the white paper, but I want to kind of put this in a cultural perspective to help you understand what's really going to go on in the government. Okay, next slide. In the other direction. Here we go. All right, so what this is it's essentially Google Trends and the search for blockchain. Bottom line is, blockchain is expanding globally at an incredible rate. These are all the countries where blockchain searches occurred, with the highest number here on the left corner, and the lowest number on the right corner. And interesting, see where the United States is? Why do you think that is?
Skill set?
Skill set? What do you mean?
There's not enough resources.
Well, there are not enough resources. We just heard about that. If you look at the countries that are ahead of us, right, you see very rich countries and very poor countries, right? Why would the very poor countries be on the list?
Corruption.
Corruption. So blockchain solves it. Why would the very rich countries be on the list?
Corruption.
Well, not so much. I mean, all countries have some corruption, right? But the United States, we have a very tight regulatory regime, right? And so one of the benefits, one of the blessings of living in this country is we have a very mature, stable economic system. This blockchain thing, cryptocurrencies, it kind of messes with that. So you can't really do a lot of it here. So they're all going to these places like Singapore and some of these other places. I spent some time recently with folks in the Congress, and one of their biggest concerns is, and this is a buzzword if you're talking to folks in government, they're really concerned about competitiveness. Right? Because of our regulations, right, are we losing our competitiveness? So all this brain drain is just leaving the United States and going to places like Malta. Right? So let's go to this side. This thing. Now, cryptocurrency value is larger than all of these national GDPs. Not combined. Right? So cryptocurrency is a real thing, right? It's not just, a couple of geeks, we're not just a couple of weirdos getting together in Colorado, right? Well, we may be, but in fact, I do say that the folks in this community are different, and I'm glad of it. This is an amazing group of people in this community. But this is big, and it's growing if you think about it, in 10 years, this whole thing went from practically nothing to a major thing. Okay, next slide. So let's talk about a brief history of blockchain. All right, so we all know 2008, the global financial crisis, right? Banks were too big to fail. The overwhelming sentiment then, right, was a distrust for large public institutions, right? In fact, in the very genesis block of Bitcoin, the very first block, there was a headline from the London Times that talks about the massive bailout, right? So the whole start behind this was essentially a distrust of larger institutions. Okay, next slide. And that's when the Satoshi white paper came out. And honestly, there's nothing really new in it. It talked about some technologies that had been around. It just combined them in sort of an innovative way. Next slide. I'm going to try to move through these things fairly quickly so we have lots of time for questions. And during that time, the couple years that followed, right, the thing that was prevalent and continued is this distrust for large institutions. This is where Anonymous came out of. This is Occupy Wall Street. All of these, and it's not new, right? So some people, when they have an R or D after your name, you might have feelings one way or another, but the bottom line is it's been going on for a long time, right? And in that, the rise of populism. And I knew a lot of people that said, hey, my first vote is for Donald, my second one, or if Donald doesn't get it, I hope he's burning, right? And the reason why these two candidates had so much momentum is and Brexit and the whole thing is because there is this mood, this sentiment globally, right, of people wanting to be free. And this belief that absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Lord actively. Okay, next slide. So then when it came out, then people started accepting it. The first Bitcoin transaction was 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 pizzas, right? And slowly started to see the people starting to accept it. We're still not really there yet. Next slide. And then all these other cryptocurrencies started popping up, right? So anybody know how many there are today on CoinMarketCap? 2,800. Yeah, hit the next slide. When I did this one, there was 1,263. That wasn't that long ago. So they're just...
Over more than 100,000, including tokens and any issue.
Yeah. I mean, anybody and their mother can create a token with a couple lines of code, and there's tools to do it. So you get down to the bottom, they're jumping. Then an entire ecosystem started to build around this. Right? Now here's the problem. This ecosystem is completely outside of our financial regulatory system. It is a parallel system that is global. And the government is trying to essentially apply rules to the traditional system, to this new ecosystem. And it's breaking down everywhere. Next slide. Now, here's what's crazy. If in 2009, you and I both had $1, right? And I took my dollar and I put it in a box, or I put it under my pillow, and you bought 500 Bitcoins with it, right? This is where you and I would be today, in today's purchasing power. So everybody says, well, Bitcoin is unstable. You're absolutely right. That is not stable. right? And this, the dollar clearly is way more stable. It is, right? It's 10 years. Now, remember when Bitcoin took this huge surge in price, it was up to $20,000, and then it crashed down to $3,000, right? Well before that was ever 20,000, right? I kind of put my chips into Bitcoin. I said, this is the thing, right? Because when you look at the underlying fundamentals, right, the thing that drove Bitcoin from 0 to a couple hundred to 1,000, right? Those fundamentals haven't changed. When it went all the way to 20,000, they didn't change. When they dropped back down to 3,000, the fundamentals didn't change. The things that caused Bitcoin to grow never changed. Even the 2008 financial crisis, right? We kicked the can down the court. We didn't change any of the fundamentals. And I don't have time to get into, you know, supply of money and all the economic factors. All I can tell you is those factors that drove it up have not changed. And so my personal prediction is it goes to about $500,000 per Bitcoin. Because we just heard that change is hard. The things to change, they're not going to change easily. Right? All right. And by the way, every time Bitcoin prices spike, the number of wallet downloads explode. And I have heard, I don't know how to validate it, that 30 to 40% of college students today own cryptocurrency. They're holding it. Now the reason they're holding it is that Bitcoin, I'll just say Bitcoin, the traditional cryptocurrencies, are really not a very good money, right? Because of the increasing value, right? You are incentivized to hold it, not to spend it. But the cryptocurrency has a lot of other values, and I can't really get into another time. Cryptocurrency is changing the very definition of money. Whereas before, money had 4 functions, right? Unit account, unit exchange, etc. In 1972, when the Bank Secrecy Act was passed, fiat currency, the Cameroonian government had asked us to help them out because they had a rebellion going on, and the Anglo speakers were rebelling against the French speakers, and they were killing people and, you know, killing soldiers and burning villages, and, you know, it was awkward. We were invited by the Minister of ICT, Internet Communications and Technology, to give them some advice, because the rebels had launched an ICO, and they're using cryptocurrency to fund their revolution, right? So, in that conversation, she said, you know, we're really excited about all of the blockchain applications. Now, the president had just won his 38th, he just won the election, he's now the president for 38 years in a row. And she said, we're excited about all of the applications, except for voting. Our voting system works just fine. Right? But what I want you to know is, as you think about this and move forward in space, even in the government space, you're dealing with massive paradigm shifts, and there will be winners and losers, because some people are like this, and others are like that. Great. All right, next slide. This is just some examples of paradigms. Americans have need for the telephone, but we do not. We have plenty of messenger boys. Right? 1876. The horse is here to stay, but the automobile is only a novelty, a fact. You know, they predicted the internet. Well, I think that's even one. Oh, this is Watson, right? President of IBM, 43. I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers. Watson. Televisions won't be able to hold on to any market it captures after the first 6 months. People will soon get tired of staring at a plywood box every night. 20th Century Fox. Cellular phones will absolutely not replace local wires. This guy was a pioneer in wireless communication. And I predict the internet will soon go spectacularly supernova in 1996, catastrophically collapse. 3 commas. Now, paradigms have consequences, right? When the SS Titanic was launched, right, the headlines in all the newspapers around the world, especially starting in the New York Times, was God himself couldn't sink the Titanic. Now, I'm a Christian, I wouldn't make that claim, right? So, no, go back. So as a result, there was inadequate planning, they didn't have enough lifeboats, and when the SS California was within sight, they watched the Titanic, they saw the tail end of the Titanic up in the air. That paradigm was so strong that they believed the paradigm and not their own eyes. And then the Titanic went down. So paradigms are extremely important. I've got a lot of stuff in here about what countries are doing and stuff like that. Sadly, we just don't have the time to cover it. But as you engage with government, right, what you have to understand is you are introducing an entirely new revolutionary concept. There's going to be a great amount of fear. There are some places that are going to grab onto it, right? Places like, some places are actively doing that. You have to decide whether or not you want to go there or you want to work with people, that you're connected with. But go slow, right? Educate, bring people along, and I would say part of the Gerard Blockchain Association, if you're really interested in that space, touch base with me, find out about our organization, because we're here to help people connect, communicate, and collaborate. And as a business league, our only function is to help folks that want to do business with the government, essentially do business with the government in blockchain and related technology. And with that, I'm out of time, right?
Yes, thank you, George.
Thank you.
We only have about a 5-minute break, so, maybe enough, you want to pour some hot coffee in your cup, and that's about it. We'll clean up with,